Hello, welcome. Our fourth episode in the lockdown, and I'm delighted to be joined by the one and only Marty Clarke. Marty, thanks a million for joining on.
No problem. Thanks a million for the invite, John.
How you keeping?
Yeah, not too bad. Considering obviously it's been a big sort of transition period for everyone, and it's hard to watch it affecting people in all sorts of ways. But personally, me and the wife, we've been able to bunker down with the three wee ones, and we're getting through it okay. So fingers crossed, everyone can kind of push through it from a health and finance view and everything else.
What are you? Were diagnosed with Addison's disease, and I read that it affects the adrenal gland in producing cortisol, and I think it's cortisol, and would I be right in saying what's the other one? Sorry, the steroid.
Yeah, it's mainly just cortisol with my form
right.
of it. Yeah.
Would you be in high risk then? Is this affecting you that way?
Yeah, I suppose as much as I wouldn't want to concede it, even though it is respiratory, my particular days with my condition where I'm not feeling so well would be more vomiting bug, that type of side of things. But you just, because this thing's so novel and they don't know much about it, you're kind of on higher alert. So I've still been able to train away and stuff, but just observing all the measures where possible. So fingers crossed, I don't need to worry too much about it.
No, it's good that you're safe and well. And you were coming into your third year with St. John's, coaching wise. I suppose the third year you're expecting big things then, or they're expecting big things from you, maybe.
No, it was kind of just an opportunity opened up when I stepped away from playing. Obviously with John's there, my brother, and he'd been there for a number of seasons. And Benny Corrigan was in initially, and they were looking for a trainer. And it was just good timing for me, and I went in, and I really did love it. It quickly developed from just taking the skills and the physical side of it to getting really involved in picking a team and checking out the opposition that as well as anyone and other guests you've had. Like, it's a real addictive bug once you get in on it. And I know as a player, you just go from game to game, and you give your all on match day and trainings and everything, but it doesn't really affect you that much. But as a manager, if you lose a game and you feel that something could have been done differently, you're stewed, you're losing sleep. It's crazy, but obviously it's something that I really enjoyed. And then last year, Francie Poland came in with St. John's, and they are a very good group, and there's a lot of improvement there, a lot of quiet achievers as well. Some very good athletes and excellent players. So really enjoyed it. Missed out by Glen in the semi-final, but back for more this season if it happens.
And with the standard of down football, how do you find it coming back and seeing it? And has it improved since 2010? And what's the main changes really?
I think it has, John. I think the standard down club football, firstly, I think it's really well run. You speak to a lot of lads from other counties, and matches are being pulled a couple of hours before the games and such. But the down league and championship is particularly well run. I think the Friday night time slot works well. I think they run the championship really well as well. You don't have to look at the results on a Friday night or the latter stages of any championship across all four divisions and three championships. The amount of draws, the amount of going into the last couple of weeks of the league, you're trying to work out if we beat them and they, like, who's going up and down. So they're really, really competitive. I suppose you're always judged on your senior champions, and I think it's 11 or 12 years since anyone other than Burn or Kilcoo won a senior championship and down. But I do think that speaks more about Burn and Kilcoo and how far ahead they are, and particularly with Kilcoo's run, over a number of years, but particularly this year, getting to the All-Ireland final and getting to extra time in it shows you that down football is healthy. In the club scene, like Kilcoo weren't blowing teams out of the water in league and championship over the last number of years. There's teams challenging, stay with them, and then they can go on to become the second best team in the whole country. So I think down football is, the club scene is very competitive, and that's the key to it.
The second division itself is, seeing, the standard in Saul as well is sort of frightening as well. As, these teams are up and coming, and that is the standard of Division Two now. It is of a high standard as well.
Division Two is a brilliant league. It's so difficult to get points in any ground that you go to. You look at Darracross, Breda, Carryguff last year, going to Saul, Longstone, Kingdom, Glen. Like, they're really top teams who've all been up. All have had players that played at that high level, and most of those clubs are Division One. So Division Two, I think a lot of teams that are dropping down into it now, they're actually dropping further, maybe into three, rather than bouncing back up, because they're really getting stung. And the standard in Division Two is so high, and you have to be on every single week.
With the coming back from a professional background, Marty, and you've seen and been involved with around teams and different managers and that. What's your style of coaching then? Have you got your own style, or is it leaning on or just taking bits from other people as well?
Yeah, I think you kind of the three things I break down as a coach is either you have the ball, the opposition have the ball, or the ball's in dispute, so it's a break ball or whatever it is. So you kind of try and base the way you play around that. So when we have the ball, are we going to run it? Are we going to kick it? Do we want to keep the ball, or do we want to go gung ho? So depending on oppositions, I would like my team to share the ball where possible. Just get as many guys on it, always feeding the ball to the man in the better position. So that's one aspect. Against strong oppositions, you maybe have to, sacrifice a forward just to get a foothold in the game and drop back. So defensively, you're maybe, biding your time a little bit in those type of games. But by and large, you're trying to, go at the game, attack if you can, using the ball all the time, trying to get away from head down on the ball, 50-meter runs, just move it by foot, move it by hand, and get after it. And then I suppose the big one is when the ball's in dispute. So how much do you want it, really? That's what the break ball is. That's what a ball in the forward line that the defender gets a paw to. Who wants that ball enough? So it's about trying to encourage guys, if they feel they're out of the play, track back to that danger zone, to be first back to that next ball that could break. And then just showing that desire and courage to get in and win it. So then you have it. You don't need to defend, sort of thing. So kind of keeping it simple in that respect, and just learning as you go, watching the top teams and some of the teams that get the better of you.
You see, with there's always been said that it's hard for great players to get their ideas across because it does come so naturally to them. Probably why my coaching, is pretty simple. Do you find it hard to articulate sometimes what you're trying to get across?
I think it can be frustrating. You have to remember that you have so many different characters, you have so many strengths, and I think in any good team I played in, any team that was successful, the coaches allowed players to play to their strengths. So if your strength was kicking the ball, that's what you should be doing more often than not, and that's what I wanted to do. And playing for Down, playing for Collingwood, the team was set up to let me kick the ball. Other players are brilliant, defending, tackling, winning that first ball back. Let them do that. People watching remember Callum King, massive role for Down in 2010, breaking up opposition attacks. I knew if I was in 5 meters of Callum, he would give me the ball. That's not Callum. That's not a slight on him, because he's a good footballer, but he knew his strength was to dish that off after he had done his part. So it's kind of, there's no shame in not being able, everyone can't kick a point from 50 metres, get the guys who are good at it to do that. So the most frustrating thing about coaching is players not understand their own limitations, maybe hearing the crowd saying, oh, have a shot, but that sort of thing. But there's no shame in just basically building your play around what the strengths of your certain players are.
I think that the Donegal, when Jim McGuinness came in, he definitely had that, this is your role, and players were willing to accept it or they weren't. I think they had that thing about getting into the shooters. I think it was only 3 people allowed to shoot, really, unless it was, dire need sort of thing. But I think that's where it comes down to, how do you explain that to players? Like, everyone's got an ego at at the
Yeah.
best of times. How do you come across then and explain it to them?
Well, I think you kind of have to leave your ego at the door when you walk into any environment. Something I learned in Australia, kind of the first day I walked into Collingwood, when I went over there, you're coming across as an 18-year-old, had good success with the nine minors in the school and everything else, and then all of a sudden you go from feeling fairly good about yourself as a footballer to you're the skinniest, ugliest, worst footballer out of the 45 guys on the list, and you have to be prepared to, be humble and work your way back up. So I think it's a matter of getting it across to guys. And footage can be very useful, John. If you record games and you're able to pause it to a player and pull out multiple examples of where they made the wrong decision or potentially they bit off more than they could chew, and then reinforce that with better clips or better examples or a training drill around that. You have to be smart about how you convey your messages. It's not a matter of roaring onto the field and things like that. But I definitely think teams with egos don't really go anywhere.
The big thing there, what you're saying, was stats have come in so much now, and video analysis, and even from the lower tier football as well. Um, how important and how much emphasis do you put on that whenever you're picking teams or trainings or whatever? You're now working for Stat Sports as well. A vast company that's professional soccer teams. See, I think it's Juventus as well, and Man City, and the Irish rugby team, and that. How much emphasis then is put onto the stats?
Well, from the Stat Sports perspective, you're looking at all the top clubs in the world, in every sport, including Gaelic. Your Dublin, Mayo, Armagh, Tyrone, all those Super 8 type teams. Galway, Cork, and hurling as well. Unfortunately, we don't have Down yet, but we will get them. So I think being in that environment, it's a part of the puzzle. The physical stats that the GPS produce. Some teams with the high performance staff, they'll use it as an injury prevention tool or a return to play tool. But I think most coaches, managers now in the Premier League or international rugby, they'll have their eye on it at all times. What their guys are tracking, are they dropping off towards the end of quarters or halves? Comparing high speed running between two players, two wingers maybe in rugby that are vying for a position, because they can tell you things that to the eye you might think, I don't think he's working hard, and then all of a sudden he's running as far as anyone else, or his high speed efforts are that high. So I think the best teams use it as part of the puzzle. They're not saying, oh, John Fagan's running the fastest in the team, he has to play every minute of every game. They're kind of saying, well, look, where can we best use John in this team? Where can we get the best out of his strengths? So
bench easy, Marty.
It is scary though where it's gotten to, and I think only the best teams are really trimming down the small part of that piece, because they're going to be taking stats from the physio, from the doctors, from the psychologists, and then these stats that they get from nutritionists and body fat experts and all that, as well as a GPS. So it's complex, but it's definitely useful, and most teams will have it now, even at club level.
Yeah, it's fascinating, too, because I've seen it firsthand as well how even the players, I think, get excited about it as well, to see their stats coming up, and see if anyone can beat them and all that there as well. So it's a great competitive tool as well for them.
It definitely is. Stat Sports, they're having an athlete series as well, so anyone in the street can go out and buy it, wear it during a game, a five-a-side, a training, a Gaelic game, and at the minute with the lockdown, a lot of the professional players are wearing them. So you've got Hector Bellerin from Arsenal leading the high speed, and you've guys like me and you trying to catch them. So it's good fun there. But look, they're a brilliant company, Stat Sports, and I'm lucky to be in there.
Yeah, that's a local company as well, Marty. Two lads from your area, is it, to set it up?
Yeah, they're both just from the other side of the border, in County Louth, but the business is in Uri, and they pushed it themselves. Sean O'Connor, Alan Clarke, You know, when nobody had ever heard or had any belief that this is the way it would go. They knew that this was going to be kind of the next big thing, and you know, pretty much the biggest company in the world that do it now. So they're great lads, and they just keep pushing on.
Well, hopefully Down's listening to this and then you get in, get into them next year. Well, I want to take you back to whenever I actually first seen you playing football, and you were known as John's brother back then. Turn up for the books. It was St. Louis tournament. I think it was Grange. Was that the school you were?
Yeah,
with?
yeah, it was Grange. Yeah.
And all this noise was about, you know, there's this player Marty Clarke playing now, so we had to go out and see him. I was just wondering how much, whenever you were that age, say 10, 11, how much self-awareness did you have that, you know, that you had a talent, and, you know, was there any pressure on you even back then?
Yeah, look, they were brilliant days playing all the underage. I suppose unraked had a really strong underage setup as well, so you were able to develop, you know, all year round. We had the big indoor facility. Probably when I was 10 or 11, that was built, and we could train all year round. And there's a lot of good players in the club, and we had a lot of success. So that kind of kept you working hard, and I just always had that desire just to keep getting better, to you know, push on, to, you know, play well in the big games and stuff. And it did start at a young age, even those tournaments, you know, they prepare you for it.
Did see whenever you were playing though, like, when did you realize, like, oh, I want you to be modest or anything like that there, but when, like, honestly, would you have said, this is a bit easier, you're taking around players a wee bit easier than others? Or
I think it probably, that sort of realization came when you're playing in the grades above you. I remember playing under 16s when I was maybe 12 or 13, against a really good Bosco team. And I was tiny, like I was, you know, I was skinny and small, and sort of developed a wee bit later in that respect. And I remember playing really well in a game against Bosco, when I was particularly young, like against a strong Bosco team with the likes of Mark Rooney and, you know, Ryan Lynch and guys like that. And that I remember thinking after that game that if I could happen the physical side to grow and get a bit stronger, and that was able to come, I knew I would be a good chance if I kept working hard.
did you ever doubt yourself whenever, you know, whenever the weight maybe wasn't coming on, and you were maybe worried, you know, that you would be left behind? Or
Yeah, well, I just always tried to be smarter, I suppose. You know, anticipating where the ball would go, trying to buy frees when you had to, and you know, I always would have been doing the press ups, doing stuff like that, even 13, 14, to try and be hard, and you just have to be extra courageous. So I didn't let it get to me too much, and then eventually one summer John went to America to play. We shared a room, so I actually got to sleep because I didn't have to listen to him snoring. And I grew about a foot and about 3 inches that summer, so that was a big year for me.
John's 5 years older than you, Marty, isn't
Yeah,
he? Yeah,
yeah.
and obviously, you know, exceptional footballer. I had the pleasure of playing with him in St. Louis and that as well, and he won the '99 minors. You know, obviously a big influence in your playing career as well.
Massive influence. I think those 5 years, you know, when all we did was play football in the field. You know, Dad made us the Gaelic nets, and it was just the two of us, and we would just play there till it got dark, and be one v one, or it'd be shots. One of us made nets, and you know, you don't know it at the time, but that's helping you, particularly for me, playing against an older guy who was a very good player. It just helps you get that competitive edge, and it just develops your skills at a really good rate. And I, you know, owe a lot of that to John, and he's always really supportive in every way, even then when he became known as Marty's brother.
I didn't say that, John, by the way. But the American Lane, then, Marty, that's where you're from, and you know, I think it's the southern point of Northern Ireland, and you know, right on the beach, and that, you know, fantastic even surroundings to go training by yourself and all as well. Do you think that had an influence on your
Yeah,
development?
It did, John. Without it, I certainly wouldn't have got to Australia. And then when I came back in 2009, I lived back at home again, which was challenging. But the physical environment, you have the beach, you have the mountains, and I would have done a lot of training on my own away from organised training with Down or the Kingdom before I went and when I came back. And yeah, really, that was a difference for me. I think I was able to get a lot of confidence from those extras that I was doing out at home.
It's a lovely part of the world, and the Kingdom Club. Then, you've always had fantastic underage teams. You've actually won a league. You came back and played a couple of games, and you won the league in 2007, was it?
Yeah, no, that was 2007.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I remember even underage, the battles we had with Restrever, like under 14s, under 16s, minors. We kept, like, Restrever win it one year, then the Kingdom would win it. Like, those games I think we were probably the two best underage teams in Ulster for those, series of years, right up to minor level.
Do you think that even whenever I was playing minors and up there, and Rick had a fantastic team as well? There was John, there was Bibbs, there was Manu, you could name 9 or 10 boys that were exceptional footballers. Do you think that age group underachieved by his only winning one league title? He's never really got a go at the championship.
Yeah, there's no question. There's no question that completely underachieved to the point where, getting relegated was a sort of travesty. And that was, we could promote it, then relegate it, promote it. But it was kind of just the kind of work, guys were emigrating, guys were finding, other distractions away from football, and they weren't getting their full potential. But, from an underage translating to senior success, it was criminal, really, because the talent and the guys that sort of were there that didn't translate to success. If we ever had everyone at home 3 or 4 years rattle at it, the way Kilcoo are galvanised and a strong unit and 30 audit training or more, we never had that at senior level, and that sort of does sting a bit.
Yeah, whenever you look back at that Kilcoo documentary, that's the big thing. No one leaves Kilcoo. They said, there's no immigration or anything out there because there's no need of. So, I suppose whenever you were over in Australia, then there was more than enough boys from home.
There was.
Yeah.
There was there was big numbers across there, but that was just that's just the environment it was in. There was a lot of boys weren't professionals as such. The work dried up at home. The boom sort of ended a bit, and fellas went, and a lot of them are staying over there. They've had great opportunities in Melbourne and Sydney and Perth and all over the place, and you can't begrudge them that. That's lifestyle choices that fellas had to make. So it's just the nature of it.
Yeah, and then 2005, when you were playing the minor final, I actually watched it today, and you blew me away to the water. But I think beating Tyrone then, that was maybe for you saying that you just could win it.
Yeah, I think we kind of put that up as the All-Ireland final in the build-up to it. We probably didn't have as strong a team on paper as 2004 when Tyrone beat us in the semi-final of the All-Ireland. But that win against Tyrone, when James Colgan's putting in the top corner to win by a point, you're going to have a good year. And that was one of the best years I ever had as a player. Training in Dundrum and Murdoch and up at the college in Uri. It was just class. That sort of age, 16, 17, you're just fearless. And we played some unreal football that year.
Yeah, you had unprecedented success then. Although you didn't win with St. Louis, you were still getting noticed and racking up big scores. And so how did it come about then? The Collingwood got in touch with you?
I've actually been down to a combine in Brisbane. So Brisbane had invited 10 or 11 guys down for a camp where they were looking to bring across a couple of lads, and I didn't get picked. I thought I went really well at the weekend. It was athletic testing and ball skills and everything, interviews and stuff like that. So they didn't pick me, and I was like, that was it. I don't want to even hear this anymore. It's just Gaelic for me. And then Collingwood got in touch about 6 months later and actually came to my house the guy, Derek Hine, you call him, who I ended up living with, he followed my progress, and he was able to say to me, I watched this game against Offaly and I think that you're able to try. So I was thinking, geez, this guy actually seems to know, because a lot of Aussies, they try and, bullshit a bit, for a better term, and they don't really know exactly what Gaelic football is or what the different competitions, because we've so many. But Derek really knew his stuff, and I listened to him, and then that was it. I got my contract after I went across for a trial.
I was listening to Cormac Benny's interview with you, a fantastic interview, by the way, and you were saying that one piece that I thought interesting was that you went over by yourself.
Yeah.
And that must have been strange at the time.
No, it was, and as I think I said in Cormac's podcast, that was a massive thing for me to be able to get from, as you say, Cranfield Beach, nice isolated bubble, living, just all I knew was school and football, really. To get on a plane and get myself to Melbourne for 4 or 5 million people, and that was a big moment for me as a person, and then everything sort of fell in behind it.
The first the thing that you said in another interview was that you set your goal on being the second worst player in Collingwood, then the third worst player, fourth worst, and so on. And you were sort of thinking to yourself about injuries, people getting injured and all that. Do you think you need that mindset of like that's very self-driven? Is that a you need that quality?
I think so. Like, I think I was going over there to give it to give it a shot and try my best to play as soon as I could. And I knew I had to acknowledge initially that I was the worst player on that list. Whether I was or wasn't, in terms of Australian rules and their game, I knew nothing of it. I didn't know the ball, so I was the worst player in my head. So I just, every week, every hour I was in at the club, I was trying to become better at certain guys, in different little things. And then eventually you get into the best 22 and you get picked, to play, and that's satisfying. Like,
how difficult was it from the skill set then? Because obviously you've been practicing like your whole life. You never played soccer?
No.
Underage? No interest? Or
massive interest, but just I love five-a-side and kicking about, all that, but never really picked a club and went to it. It was just all into the Gaelic.
And then just picking up the oval ball. Then like there's videos of you on YouTube and out there practicing. Like, how often were you practicing then to get your skill set up?
The ball was the easy bit for me, because I just love hand-eye skills. Teach me. I'll just practice till the cows come home. I love that. See, gym, game awareness, tactics, that's not really my thing. So all those things were sort of holding me back a bit. But every single day I was kicking the ball, I was handling the ball. Like, that struck me when I would be a pre-training session. So pre-training over here, guys are dribbling, drabbling in, especially at club level, or trying to hit the crossbar, score from the long line. You'll see over there, these guys like were in pairs, and there were 3 or 4 footballs, and they were hands really quick and palming it, kicking it, palming it. They were just really sort of honing their craft, and the handling ability of the Australians, it was just frightening. I knew that was something that I kind of never really got on par with, because a lot of their PE and sport growing up is cricket, basketball, all the hand-eye stuff, whereas we're all, as you said, soccer, Gaelic, it's all mainly the foot stuff. So that was a big eye-opener, and something that I really tried to play catch-up with.
The concentration levels, Marty, then, do you think it sets apart, ordinary club players from county players? Like, what is the difference, would you say, that sets you apart?
In terms of the performing on the game, or preparation?
Everything. Like, even from, say, like a fella, two boys with similar abilities, but one makes it, one doesn't. Would it be concentration levels? Would it be high up on the list?
I think, concentration, maybe game intelligence more than concentration. Understanding that if you're 2 plays away, so if your team wins it back, that you don't need to run somewhere immediately, you can hold back, try and lose your opponent. Or if you're playing in an inside forward line, say the timing of the run, knowing if a left footer has it where they want to place it. I think it's more guys that are so in tune with each other. You look at Dublin and the backdoor cut, the amount of goal opportunities they get when they're coming through, and you think an easy point's on, and then all of a sudden the likes of Dean Rock just suddenly cut inside, and the player in possession just hand pass it into that space, because he's like, that takes a lot of synergy and intelligence and everything else. So I think the best teams and the best players are always in the game. They're always thinking about I'm a chance here, that the play's never out. You're never out of it.
With you said about relationships in players, there, knowing where to kick the ball, where to receive it, and that. In 2005, you had a great relationship with Paul McComsky. He was, real live wire. And then 2010, it would have been with Benny. Is that something you worked on, or was it just natural?
Yeah, I think obviously in 2010, my role was kind of out there to look in for those guys, and McComsky, had a big year in 2010 as well, and often it was him and Benny, and John was in there as well. So it's kind of like a non-verbal communication. Benny or Paul or John, whoever it was, particularly Benny, knew when I got the ball and I looked up, I wanted to deliver that ball immediately to his favoured side. So if the defender was behind him, I'd drop it in front. If the defender was in front, it was going over the top. And it's kind of something that you just kind of click with certain players. They know what's going to happen, and it's difficult to defend against. And obviously I had it throughout my career with John at club level, but the likes of Benny and McComsky as well, it's just kind of that non-verbal communication.
Yeah, it's there's always, to get to the top, I suppose you need to have that brought in to what side a player likes more. Did you study anything like that, or was it just natural as well, like maybe a player likes it in the air more, a couple of bounces in there or whatever?
You study it, as in you store it in training and in games and in playing against them at club level. You see what the player wants. I sort of perceived myself when I came back from Australia as being a distributor. I wanted to assist. I wanted to get the best out of the scoring forwards. And for me, it was putting the ball in the best position for them to do that. It wasn't to, putting it the defender side. It was just, certain players I get bounced in front of them. Certain players I prefer to kick the ball on the full to guys. Certain players, especially at club level, don't like it coming in that hot. So you just have to know your player that you're kicking it to. And obviously it helps if the receiver is on the same wavelength.
With that in mind, do you think there's a big emphasis on picking teams and building a team around relationships as well? Maybe two players work well together, maybe three players work well. Maybe there's someone that's is a good player, but they just not in the same wavelength as the other ones.
Yeah, I definitely think there's merit in that. I think those kind of maverick players that are off the cuff all the time, you see most of them guys are starting on the bench now, and they're kind of break in case of an emergency late in the game if you're behind. But I think if you're trying to work a game plan and you're trying to play a certain way that's playing the percentages, you do need everyone on the same wavelength where possible.
I got a lot of questions through, Marty, and a lot of them are about like saying, does Marty regret this? Does Marty regret that? I suppose like people want to say, do you regret not coming back for Down? And after your diagnosed illness, come back from Australia, do you regret leaving, not playing for Down? I suppose it's more regret for Down supporters that you left.
Yeah, well, I suppose when I came back, the initial intention, of course, was to play. But I had just had that diagnosis that you touched on at the start, and I didn't know how significant it was going to be. I'd lost my career in Australia off the back of that. Before I got diagnosed, I played some pretty bad games for the reserve team because I was just feeling terrible, and my confidence took a big knock. And then we had a child as well. We just had a baby, you know, Rose. Got married, so there's lots of moving parts. I didn't know if I was going to go to uni, was I going to get a job. It was a tough time. I just felt that if I was going to throw county football and all the expectations into that as well, it was going to be tough. I did meet Jim McCorry when I first came home, and we talked about all that, and I just knew in my heart that I wasn't going to be able to commit properly to it. And then as time went on, as you know yourself, once you step away from playing, it kind of, the mountain gets bigger and it seems further away, and you question whether or not you're good enough and everything else. So yeah, of course I would have loved to come back in 2012, 2013, sorry, probably 2014, 2015. Got to the All Ireland final again and won it, and of course, but there's so many different things going on. I just don't think it was possible.
The with coming back and playing club, then did you find that the players that were marking you, was there much sledging going on? Did they give you the touch maybe?
The guys who were coming to mark you were definitely had discovered the gym. Previously, it was an advantage coming back from Australia, having been in the gym all year. But when I came back again, it was like, oh, this guy isn't budging.
Do you think that was the biggest part then, coming back as well, like the professionalism maybe?
I think so, John. I think that if I found it very difficult to shift opponents when I was playing in that forward line, and we were playing in Division 2 in my first year back with a brilliant year, or sorry, my second year back, and I got found my feet in that. Brendan McVeigh senior managed the Kingdom, and we I don't know if a team's ever scored as much in Division 2. We were racking up massive scores, and we talked about what a good league Division 2 was. You know, Lough Island and Patrick was in that league. And I really enjoyed it, but there was other games. I remember marking Jerry Collins and just thinking, this isn't happening for me here. Like, those players that were really focused and county standard, I wasn't really able to have the impact I would have liked. So I do think maybe I was on the downward curve, and then other guys were still seeing Marty Clarke as being a big scalp. And if you fumble the ball, the crowd, if we're at an opposition game, we're up in arms celebrating. And that sort of wasn't enjoyable, as you can imagine.
Is that why the kingdom lengthened the grass even for you to hit free kicks as well?
I think so. But yeah, it just kind of, there were so many things going on then. I don't regret that I'm not playing at the minute. I love coaching. I have the passion for that. My family's very important to me, and I've jobs there as well. So great times, but not that many regrets.
No, and what a career you've had. I think it's more regret for down people that they've seen, that you played in 2010 and we got to the final, and if I had you longer, maybe we would be back at the top table. But that's life, and it's but it was brilliant to have you for that campaign anyway. The Macquarie Cup then, Marty, I think it was St Coleman's in Newcastle I seen, and it was the first time I've ever seen a player marked as tight in any way, shape or form. There's one player standing in front of you, one's beside you. I think there's one to the side of you as well, even whenever they had the ball. So, like, how did you get around that?
It was just kind of sheer weight of balls being played to me. the lads are programmed to hit me at all times, and if it was intercepted, it wasn't my fault. But some of those campaigns with St Louis, with Steve McVeigh and Niall McAleenan, and then that game against St Coleman's you're talking about, Cathal Murray had just left to go to St Coleman's, so obviously he would have known that I did have a big influence on the team, but also if he could stop me, other guys' heads potentially would drop as well. And I think we sneaked through after a replay that year and got to the final against the Abbey. But yeah, it was just a matter of being smart about it. And if you got one score but you didn't get them all three balls because they were intercepted, people kind of forget that. And it was just a matter of keeping your head and being patient.
That Macquarie time that for St Louis to be in there was something special. Like, who would you say was the best players that you've played with and seen at Macquarie level?
I think the best player I played with was James Colgan and Joe Ireland. At that era, at that kind of success that we had, those two guys were, for 17, 18-year-olds, they were serious athletes, serious leaders, serious skill. They had everything, and they were the midfield sort of backbone for everything. So I think if I had to pick between the two, they're so different, the players, but I probably would go for James, just because I played with him that minor success, and he was captain, and he was a great leader, and such a big, strong man. He always fed me the ball as well, which gets him in the good bits. But I think those two guys really were the driving force. They were a year older than me, and then there were some great players knocking about against you as well. Like say Kevin Dias from the Abbey was on fire back in those days. Colin Kavanagh and Charlie Vernon were massive players for Armagh and Pat. So many top players, and those are the days that kind of set you up for that county career. And I didn't know at the time, but the big games in Australia too.
Yeah, I don't even know what the competition we played in St. Louis. I think it was that far down, so I don't know. I can't comment on Macquarie, but it was brilliant to see. I suppose, Marty, with the Macquarie and all that there, and success coming so young, how did you keep yourself level-headed?
I suppose it was just that sort of single-mindedness of always knowing that there's bigger things ahead here. This is only under 18. This is only under 16. The senior level is where it's all about. And I always had that desire because John was a bit older than me, and he was playing at that level, and you could see the jump. Obviously, had some brilliant coaches as well that keep your head in the ground and keep telling you where to improve and stuff like that. So I kind of, while there was good achievements early, I always wanted to play for down and challenge myself against the very, very best, and I hadn't done that, I felt. So when I was young, that was still the drive to, once I did get there, to be able to make it.
And a question that was sent in, when Marty was at the top of his game, or even the journey to getting there, what was he doing different, really, that stood out, from club training?
Yeah, I had two things from there. It was one of them people won't know about is endurance running. I did a lot on my own. That was my barometer. If I hadn't done at least 2 big runs a week, that kind of red zone 6-7K stuff on the beach or around the lanes and stuff, I needed that to give me the confidence to go on the pitch and know that my opponent hadn't done that. And then when I was on the ball, I was never fatigued really, because I knew it had such a big base. So that was one. That's my thing. Speed and gym and stuff. That's just something that a chore I had to do. So I was able to get on the pitch. But the endurance stuff I love. And the other one was just my left foot kicking. I didn't waste any time on practicing my right foot. And I know there'll be coaches thinking, don't say that. But for me, I could have spent hours and weeks and years trying to get my right foot, but I just wanted to make my left foot absolutely elite. And the amount of practicing I did in the back fields in the garden on left foot and all outside of the boot, inside of the boot, drilling it, taking the pace off the ball, literally hours and hours from I was 15, 16, 17. And my get out was right-handed. So if I was completely hemmed in, I could hand pass or handball the ball with my right hand. 40. So that got me out. But the amount of time that I spent on my left foot growing up, I really wanted to make sure that I was elite in that respect.
What advice would you give for 15, 16-year-old now that maybe is getting to a high standard and is thinking about where does he go from here? How does he get to that level now? Where us clubs might be looking at him. What would he do?
As I said, and that's how my mind works, is there's a lot of guys now you see coming on the club teams and county teams, and they're brilliant athletes and they're really good at a lot of stuff, but they're not really outstanding at anything. And there's room for those players, definitely. But if you want to set yourself apart, you need to have 2 or 3 strings to your bow that are elite. And if that's kicking, if if you are a defender and your man doesn't score against you ever, focus on that. Watch the best defenders. Be tenacious. Do boxing, whatever it is. But you need to have one or two standout things that is going to make people remember you. Because a lot of guys are coming in now and are being coached and they're being asked to play a certain role, and they're okay at hand passing and they can kick if they need to, and they're strong and they're fit, but they get taken off after 40, 50 minutes. Well done, you did your job, away on you go. So I think young lads now need to see, if you're a finisher, make sure you can finish under pressure, you can use both feet, whatever it is, work it out. But don't spend all your time trying to be okay at everything. Spend a lot of your time trying to be elite in one or two things, and everything else will fall in.
Yeah, like that's something that's not said a lot. Like, whereas you said, like, coaches would be saying, "Oh, practice left, practice right. Be good at all round." What was your role then, Marty? Whenever you're looking for players, is it an agent or are you a scout for Aussie Rules now?
Neither.
That's not what Mickey Hart says.
Both of those words are banned. No, I've talked about it before. Obviously, it's seemingly contentious, and I get it. Guys are taken away from their club and county in their prime age, and their opportunity for them to represent is gone. But I'm detached from all that. I don't scout. I'm not an agent. I'm not in touch with the clubs directly. It's when a kid has been tracked by a team, and you have to remember these are big businesses as well. The likes of the big Melbourne clubs are multi-million-pound businesses or dollar businesses. They track them, so that's either themselves, club officials, or they'll have. You'd be surprised the amount of guys that are married to Aussie girls that a club have a link to, and they're going to watch school games in Connacht or whatever it is. But I come in at the end when they've been selected essentially and they've agreed to it, then that I make the transition easier with skills and game awareness and talking to the family. And I think a lot of the perception can be that it's they come in and they whip the boys out. The amount of clubs that say they're just inundated with Irish lads saying, "How do I get a chance? Like, this is all I want," So it's definitely two ways, and the amount of guys of that age group that are emigrating for job opportunities in other industries is never really talked about. But here's guys that their industry is a sport, and they seem to get a real bad rep. And as I said, I acknowledge it can be frustrating, but at the end of the day, it's a massive opportunity.
Like, there's, I suppose, the news that Callum McShane was going over at, I think he's 26. Would he be 26?
Yeah, I think he is. Yeah.
Do you think that it's being leveraged now for counties, for players to get looked after better by the counties as well? Saying, such and such is after me, or
I think certainly in McShane's case, that was very much like Adelaide wanted him, and he did want to go, from what I've heard, but at the end of it, it was just a bit risky, and Tyrone were able to come in and say, look, I don't know the fella, but I don't know if the job he was in was a career he had for life or whatever, and the offer Tyrone made more sense to him at the time. So his was truly that's the way it fell for him. And it would be a ballsy thing to do if you were just saying that Sydney Swans rang you there. we give Sean Oak, Sydney Swans are looking for me there.
Sean will be on your back. But Marty, with that, do you think the way Jay's going, do you think it's going to go semi-professional or even full-time professional? The way, I'm sure, like, whenever you come back from down, you were well looked after as well. There seems to be that there's acceptance for elite footballers to be looked after, but then, the second-tier footballers, third-tier footballers, there's going to be some time that they're going to say, hold on a second.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Personally, I don't think it'll happen. Just on how the GA was born, and what it means, and it's so unique. You know, I couldn't. I had mates in Australia 6, 7 years. I played them, and they couldn't understand. They still didn't get how we weren't getting paid over there. And once they see the athletes in the stadiums and all at county level, and but a lot of me, part of me is like, I hope it always stays this way, because I've sat in change rooms after games with Collingwood, and we've been heavily beaten against rivals, and half the change room isn't bothered. They're just worried about, you know, what they're doing later or whatever else. And I suppose the very best teams are played in over there, the culture was this win at all costs. But a lot of guys, you know, some are in it for the money, some are in it for the lifestyle, whatever. You're sitting in a change room with the Kingdom are down after a league loss, and you know you're about to cry. And that passion, it cannot. Professionalism will dilute that. There's no question. So what we have in Ireland is truly amazing, and you don't want to lose it. But on the other token, knowing what guys are putting into it for no reward, and you know guys leaving work and you know doing early morning gym session, and the quality of the, you know, the product that the championship is, and the money it brings in through gate receipts, TV rights, you would love to see them, you know, at least getting, you know, maybe, I don't know a figure, but a certain figure at the end of the year to say, look, thank you, this is money that you've earned through gate receipts, TV rights, jumper sales, whatever it is, you know, jersey sales, whatever it is. I would love that, because they deserve it. And I suppose you're looking at 30 players on a county panel. It's 1,000 guys, say in Ireland roughly. Is that affordable? Could you pay them a fee? You probably could, but then the club players, you say, it's just so difficult.
Yeah, because there's never going to be a right and wrong answer to it, because it is going to go on, because, you know, as you say, it's multi-million-pound business now, and you know they were talking about tax breaks and that there for players, and I'm sure there's something that there will be in 10 years. It won't stay the same. I can't see it staying the same, but especially with the amount of players leaving now too.
I think it would raise the standard if there was financial incentive. So, like when I say, if they're able to keep it where you're still playing for your county, and there's no transfer or draft or anything like that, I think it would raise the standard if you're able to recover better. So, if you're able to go to training and then go home and rest, or go home and do your ice baths, do your cycling, whatever, as opposed to go back into the classroom the next day, go back to the building site, whatever it is. As you said, the very elite possibly are looked after, but that's only a handful of players in the whole of Ireland. Like if everyone, you know, could have that, I would love to see it, but I totally understand, you know, why it'll probably never happen.
When you come back from America or Australia, and after, was there ever any offers from America then to come over, and were you ever tempted to?
I suppose I would have loved to have, but it's just with the family and all the commitments that I had here, it never really came around. I was married, and you know, I'd seen Australia, and I was fortunate enough to do a lot of training in America with Collingwood. We would have been in pre-season over there, so I felt that I saw enough of the world, and I had one or two offers that were attractive, but they weren't too attractive to Anna, so I had to turn them down.
The boss says, but it was great that you did turn them down, obviously, with 2010. And I know you're doing a show with the boys in a few weeks, and 2010, it was a great team and a great management team as well, with James, Paddy Talley, Drone Johnson, and Bram Guyver there as well.
Yeah, it was just an unbelievably good year. You know, we kind of knew from the start that I think we won 6 and drew 1 of the league games, and that kind of set us up. We took a lot of confidence. That got promoted to Division 1, and then we had a setback against Tyrone in the championship, but that wasn't a bad thing. It kind of got us galvanised, and then we get into the qualifiers, and every week we were coming up against slightly better opposition, Longford, Offaly, Sligo, and by the time we got to Kerry and Croke Park, we kind of had worked it out, and we were a dangerous team.
The Stephen Wallace from Kerry sent in and says, I suppose I have to ask this, how good was it beating Kerry, who was well fancied in 2010?
Oh, that was massive. You know, they were the reigning All-Ireland champions. I don't think there was one player in that changing room going into that game didn't think we were going to win in the down changing room. And it's rare you get a change room like that. You know yourself when the manager sometimes telling you that we can beat these boys, especially when you're an underdog. But we were just so confident that we matched up well against Kerry. And I think Tomas O'Shea and Galvin were missing through suspension, and we were just getting finely tuned. And I think we knew we were going to win that game. I remember saying to my mates and just that Down are going to win this game, and we won it comfortably. Like,
yeah. What professionalism do you think you brought to the back then? Do you think you had, with your time in Collingwood? Do you think it was a big impact?
Yeah, I think the main thing was training standards. So I think growing up, club and even down minors and that, a lot of it was coming naturally to you, and you weren't going through the motions at training, but there was an element of just give me the games. But then once you're in that professional environment and you're seeing guys whose livelihood is on the line every training session in Australia, everybody pushes through the cone. If you're doing a drill and you kick the ball off, you drive through that cone 1,000 miles an hour so you can get there for the next ball. And that just became natural to me. And I tried to bring that back into my play, into my training standards when I came back to Down. I would have tried to be one of the first out there and one of the last to leave, practicing frees and stuff. And then during the training, whereas maybe a 17, 18-year-old, you're getting into a tackling drill and you're rolling your eyes. I was getting into it in 2010, and there was plenty of them. They created a great training environment. Tally, James, McIver and Jerome, and I was going in there. Every tackling drill, you were getting in with your teeth gritted, and you needed to. And that, everyone was doing it as well, and that was kind of one thing that I really brought back.
The 2010, the contrast in the semi-final with the jerseys, and then the final obviously with the yellow jersey. Like it was great. I was getting ready for that game. Knowing that the two teams were changing jerseys, did it ever come into thought? Did you just practice and train or anything like that?
Yeah, we did. I hated the yellow jersey. I think it's extinct now, is it? They changed it to black and red.
Oh yes, yeah.
I know historically in '94 they beat Cork in it, but I could never work out why Down were wearing yellow. So I personally wasn't a big fan of it. But it was probably the Ulster thing, I think, was the reason why. But well, I'll always hate it now after what happened as well.
Marty, just a question was brought in about the 2010 final then. If you could change one thing, what would it be from the 2010 final?
Apart from the result. I suppose as a sort of coach as well, like, or any sport that's sort of team sport, is the hunter and the hunted. Are you going to be the hunter or are you going to be the hunted? And I did feel from an early stage in that game, from a personal viewpoint, that Noel O'Leary, who matched up with me, who we didn't predict, we had Jerome and McIver and James had predicted a lot of the matchups throughout the year against certain teams, and we did not think O'Leary would have came to me because he was doing a lot of rampaging forward that year. So it was a shock when he came to me, and he just really didn't let up the whole game. He was hands-on, serious, strong man, just didn't go forward at all, so I couldn't slip out the back on him. So maybe if I had been a bit more aggressive, I think about, from a personal viewpoint, I do think an issue that would have helped us was after we beat Kerry, I remember that we were told that the club championship would be played like a week or 2 weeks later before the Kildare game. And like, I remember personally being furious because I just didn't see the need to do that. And I know I'm not like, there's no fingers being pointed. It was the first time Down had been in a semi-final for however many years, 16 or whatever it was. But I just felt that we had such good momentum. Let's just keep going here for 3 weeks. And they played a club championship game in Ambrose, obviously did as cruciate in a game against Leitrim for Longstone. And I just feel if we had have had Ambrose and we hadn't have played that round of championship games, because we haven't been there since. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Why do we need to play a round of club championship games, which is extremely important in its own right? But this was a year where like Down had come from nowhere. We haven't been anywhere near it since. I just didn't get that decision at the time. And I remember speaking to a few guys in the management team about it, just saying I don't agree with this. And eventually, I think that cost us. And like, because Ambrose was formed that year, he was a captain. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So, like, you couldn't have had a bigger blow. And I just think that's a regret I had. Of course, I'm not pointing fingers. I didn't have a great final myself. But I just feel that decision could have cost us in All Ireland.
Well, on your own performance, Marty, do you think, like, were you trying to peak at that time? Each game, were you trying to get, all right, I have to peak in September here, or was it just?
I think it just, it's the way it happened. Because I was only back at the start of 2010, so every training I was getting was important. Every session, every time I had my hands on the ball. So I was improving as the games went on, but just in terms of the final, it was just a difficult game. A very good opponent definitely got the better of me. I know I was still able to set up scores and get involved, but certainly the influence just wasn't. It does get to you now as the years go on. You're thinking, I didn't play well in All Ireland final, or I didn't play to my potential. It does sting,
Yeah, sorry to bring it up.
No bother.
But with the and as a coach then, Marty, and I suppose, like, with that experience now, you would put into place then how for if someone is being marked like that, how to get around it and deal with that.
Exactly. And the Aussies are really good at that. Really, really good at it. If you have a guy who's getting marked out of the game or who's struggling to have their usual influence, they'll either do two things. They'll bend a lot of players round to the likes of O'Leary, not saying you can't find your own court, but they'll get other lads that punch in them, pull them back, whatever it is. You do see the best teams are doing that in GA now.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to free up their assets. I'm not saying that's the reason why, or that should have happened in 2010, but I'm just saying that's ways around it. If your best player, you want your best players given that opportunity, your best ball players. And the other one is go and stick them in defence. So if, just say you have a top player, he's not getting a sniff in the forward line, throw him in centre half back region, let him get his hands on a few cheap ones, put the defender out of his comfort zone, just let him play into the game that way. So there are things you definitely learn from as a manager.
Yeah, like I remember, like, there's times where, like, I was trying to get on the ball and I think I was ending up in my full back line by the time I got on the ball.
Yeah.
But,
That's important. Like, those touches are important when you are getting defended well, I think.
And, like, were you stuck, like you and Mark Poland obviously mainly played around the 45 midfield area. Were you instructed then not to go back as much, to do the heavy tackling, the donkey work as such?
Not necessarily. Like James, I suppose the way he played as well, a lot of people remember him for his score taking and creativity, but he was a nightmare for defenders. He really worked hard to defend, and when the ball was in your area, he really expected you to work until you got it back. But I think Mark and I had special license just to hold the defence, and I think it is important. As a coach as well, I don't want to see 13 of my players chasing back, because when we win it back, which you're going to do it from time to time, there's no forward line. So I think that Mark and I had a good connection there, and the game plan that James had set out was good, because we held that depth in the attack, and we were able to get that kick pass release and work together to move the ball inside. So it was kind of, on that day, it just didn't happen for a number of reasons.
No, and like,
Coley actually had a brilliant final.
Yeah, no, he had a brilliant campaign. Like, he really did. Didn't he? It was, it was.
Yeah, he did. Like, I remember, like, the role of a lot of players was to get the ball to Mark and I, and they knew, just feed it into us, and it was great to have that respect from the management and the kind of your teammates to put that trust in you. So, he's a top player. He's still going strong.
What about you mentioned the trainings then? Was it just cutthroat, the down trainings, and how did it compare then to the Collingwood professional setup?
It was cutthroat 2010. It really was. Tally brought that Tyrone kind of, fanatical, small-sided games where tongue was hanging out, but you were getting battered from four ways. There was never a whistle blown. There was never a free kick in training, which was brilliant. And then when you got to later on in the season, it opened up a bit, and we played a lot more expansive games in training. But those initial months were just battering matches, and it was brilliant. I think it put a real steel in a down team that kind of had a lot of skill in that, but didn't have that real hard edge. So those trainings at the Abbey were massive. And you can pick so many similarities between Collingwood and the trainings and the games and the characters in the change room, even, that you can say, he reminds me of such and such from down, and the culture's so similar. A lot of people have Irish heritage in Australia, and that they're proud of that, and it's amazing the similarities.
And what was it like running into Colin King then in the training drills?
Oh, it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. He dispossessed me so many times, but I hate it coming up against Callum and him. But he was so smart. He used to strike the body, so he would dispossess the ball that way. But pivotal player in 2010, and wasn't too many could tackle like him.
No, and with the pre-season then with Australia, Marty, it's always fascinated me. Then I think you have the record, or you did have one of the records for one of the tests. But can you let us know what the tests and what they're trying to achieve then?
Yeah, so there's a range of testing. Often, I think it's extended a bit now, but there's about a 6 to 8 week holiday. So like at the end of the season, you have 6 to 8 weeks to yourself. You have a program, but you can follow it or not, or you can go up to Belfast and. So once you got back into the club, they had it was fairly basic. I think it probably is more advanced now, but there was fat testing, so they would do like skin fold testing. Some seasons they did like a Dexter test, where it was a machine that measured your body fat content. Then the 2K time trial, so 2,000 meter time trial, was the main sort of fitness test as such, and that was my thing. Like, I needed to win or at least come second in it. That was my main thing. And then they would have like stuff in the gym, like certain weights and sprint testing and stuff like that as well, just to make sure everyone was kind of ticking over okay. But the big one was a 2K time trial.
And what time are you trying to get there?
6 minutes was always a target.
6 minutes.
So if you got either side of 6 minutes, you were usually winning it. But as I said, that was my elite thing. So that and my kicking had to be up there, because a lot of other things I was middle or below. So if you're winning one or two things, you're doing okay. But like thinking now, that time is a pretty good time. And we spent a lot of our pre-season like a 3-week block in Flagstaff in Arizona, which is kind of uni town up in the hills. Like it's in the back end of nowhere, but the town itself is about 3,000 meters above sea level. So on the bus on the way up, like guys are hunting, and you can't get your breath to live. So the first 4 days you don't train, because your body's working hard just to live. And then the training starts, and like once you get back to sea level, it's like it's legal doping. Like you're literally have more red blood cells once you get back to sea level. So we used to run the 2K time trial post Arizona the day after the flight, and you would feel amazing. Like, and there would be, I remember there's a good one that our fitness coach at the time, he had to try and justify the hundreds of thousands of dollars to go to high altitude, and it did have a brilliant effect. But was it worth the money? It was always a big debate. But there was the first year we came back, we were doing a 2K time trial before and then after, and then the one when we came back after, I actually wasn't doing it. I was injured. But one of the boys told me that the fitness coach was, so once they went round for the last laps, 5 laps of the track, it was like 5:22, and then as he got closer, it was probably about 6:15. He was like 5:59.
Just right, bending the numbers.
Obviously now everyone has their heart rate belts, and we had pacers and stuff like that. But like it's fairly good going to get around there in under 6 minutes.
And with down then, were you like, what was the trainings whenever you come back then, and even come back again? You seen different training methods. Is there any time you just said I shouldn't be doing this, or geez, we've fairly come on now, and things have improved? Or
yeah, I don't remember it, because as you said, the management team was so high end. You know, you James, who one of his main strengths was to delegate and to not be stuck in everything. He knew Tally was training the team really well and had us in great condition. He knew Jerome was looking after the opposition, and he was keeping boys right, chatting away to making sure everything was okay away from the team. And then McIver was a brilliant influence on everyone. So the trainings were a brilliant standard. Like Tally's second to none there. And then everything else around it. There was never a stage where I was thinking, geez, like this is a million miles from Colin. What am I doing here? You know, so that was a great management team.
Brilliant. And who would you say is the most influential on the way you're looking to coach and manage now in the future?
It's difficult to say. You look to other sports as well, you know, the likes of Guardiola, you know, who kind of changed the game, and it's attractive. Klopp as well, in soccer. And then obviously what Jim Gavin was able to do, you're always looking at the high level of who's succeeding and how they're doing it. So you want to put your own touch on it, and it depends on the players you have. But I suppose, you know, Jim McGuinness, you know, was brilliant as well with what he did with Donegal. Like that Donegal team from nowhere really won an All-Ireland just by sheer passion and game plan. You know, they'd obviously had brilliant players, but, you know, McGuinness, watched some documentaries, read his book. He's someone that certainly, you know, I would have looked up to as well. But you just try and take bits and pieces from everywhere.
And with the, are you still following Derby County as well now?
Yeah, you know it.
How's that working out for you? You're a fellow supports Nottingham Forest, so is it Brian Clough that you two boys love? You must have watched the Damn United.
Yeah, John's Forest. That's the biggest rival, the East Midlands rival, Derby and Forest. So we get together for it often. But yeah, I always follow them. So I'm not one to follow a crowd. So Derby's boys for me.
Follow a crowd. Big Northern Ireland supporters as well then. The two boys up at Windsor Park.
I haven't been in years, but definitely back in the day we didn't miss too many there.
Hopefully that's not an influence on your your coaching no, style.
Definitely not.
Well, just on the last wee note, how does Down then? How do you see and what's your feelings on how does Down come back up to the top table of county football?
I think they need a target. Do you know what I mean? Like you need a target. Like what have Down been doing, say, since 2010 or whatever? Oh, with a good year there, we beat Monaghan. We got, like, I would have the Anglo Celt up on the wall, and just, we haven't won it since 1994, which, given that we're down and the brilliant, you know, county that we are, and the football people and the talent that we had, the fact that we haven't won it, what is that now? 26 years, is it? Like, that should be the target. It's 3 games. You know, I know there's brilliant teams in Ulster, and there has been, but, you know, Down have beaten Tyrone, Monaghan, Donegal. They've beaten every team, you know, in between all those years. So I would just have that as a target back. Let's win an Ulster Championship at all costs. Put a deadline on it, 2 years, 3 years, whatever it is. Let's peak in the summer. Doesn't matter what the draw is. We have to win 3 games, 4 if you're the preliminary round. But that for me would be a start, because you need that silverware, and the Ulster Championship's so competitive. I personally think that it would need it to even be talked about. You know, this is the aim, guys, at the start of the year. We need to win this thing, because at the minute, is it mentioned? I don't know. Like, is it mentioned in the change rooms amongst players? Like, what's the goal of the season? If you don't have that strong goal, like I guarantee you, Kilcoo's goal at the start of this year was to win Ulster. That was their goal. If they hadn't really had a goal, we'll see how we go, and we'll see if we get cross with them. They wanted to win Ulster, and they won it. They've been looking to win that for years, and they finally did it by sheer desire and the quality they had. But I think you need to have that focus in anything you're doing. And you can say Sam Maguire if you want, whatever it is. Let's not be content by saying, well, look, we'll maybe get a good run in the qualifiers in a few days out. Like, that's, you know, I know there's a lot of teams a long way ahead, but if you have that target and you want it enough, you'll be able to do it.
Do you find that you have to bite your lip sometimes whenever you're commentating or analysing games or whatever, whenever Down are playing?
Try not to. You know, try not to. There's been plenty of, you know, big wins as well. Some of the stuff, you know, you do see that there's big discrepancies between, when they're coming up against the Tyrones and the Donegals. That Tyrone final, I think it was 2017, Tyrone beat down the Ulster final when Ronan O'Neill scored the lob. I think it was like 2-17-15 or something. Like, you do know that you're a long, long way off it. I think in all the finals Down have made since '94, only really 2003, you could have said we should have won that. But yeah, I just think it just needs to be, and there's definitely steps being made over the last year or so with Tally. It's about getting all the best players out there and basically just remembering that, it's 3 games in the summer, and once you win Ulster, I think Paul Higgins even said it in the recent show there that Ross ran. Like, once they won Ulster, they knew that there were a chance to go on, and it doesn't matter if it's Kerry or Dublin. Down have proved it. So that's my take on it.
Is there any players at the minute that that really stands out for you, and any players coming through that you know of that stands out as well?
Well, I think at the minute, you've Mooney who can turn it on. He was immense last year against Mayo, and in a number of games in the league. Obviously, he's had a setback with everything's happened to him at the start of the year, but from knowing him, he's working hard now and getting back to fitness and over the head injury. Conor Harrison as well is a he's a match winner up there. He's proved that before. McKernan's a brilliant leader. You've lots of guys there, and the performances in the league this year. Yes, the game down in Cork was a tough game, but there's little green shoots there, and there's guys coming through. The likes of Kerry, Duff and Breda, having coming up against them a number of times with St John's and the Kingdom in Division 2. Really, really good young players coming out of there. You see Daniel Guinness, James Guinness as well. Both those guys having an influence. Breda as well have a number of guys coming on that scene. Darren O'Hagan's a brilliant leader. So there's lots of things that are being done right. It's just a matter of having that belief. We're not here just to play a couple of good games in the season. We're here. This year, there was a clear target, get out of Division 3. You could see that. That was evident. The players were talking about it. Ali was talking about it. You could see the way they were setting up in their games that at all costs get out of 3. And they were going to do it. But they might still have a chance. But it's having that focus and they can prove they can do it. So, look, I think Down teams can come from anywhere to succeed.
No, definitely, and hopefully this year, all being well, everyone being safe, that we'll get a bit of first club football and then county football as well, and I might even come against you in the sideline as well, Marty. So yeah. Fingers crossed. Marty, thanks a million for that. Thanks for joining this week. Wanted to get you on for a while, but you're not on social media, so I couldn't torture you with requests.
no, look, great show, John, and thanks for the invite.
Marty, thank you so much.
All the best.
Cheerio.